buying a business that's already making, $5,000-$10,000 a month in profit, and then growing and scaling that from $5,000 a month to $20,000 a month in profit. If you're going to build a business, you want to build it in a way that's a sellable asset. By making it a sellable asset, it's going to be a much better business to run. There was a huge influx of people buying these online businesses just because money was pouring in for content businesses, for e-commerce businesses. And depending on what your skill set is, it's usually best to buy a business, optimize it to a certain point, and then flip it. A lot of people consider taking a similar path where you start off with building a side hustle or potentially buying a side hustle to a place where you can kind of replace your current income. And that's exactly what I did. I joined a startup, there's 4 or 5 people, and it was just a great company and a great industry to learn so much about and kind of help pioneer. And then also all while doing this while building a remote team around the world. So it's given me kind of a unique perspective on how to look at entrepreneurship through a different lens. And I do think there's a lot of different paths people can take with the business realm. And I kind of break it down into 3 ways. Under the entrepreneurship umbrella, there's kind of the startup, funding capital from the Silicon Valley route, which is very different because it's kind of a not profit focused. It's more just like user acquisitions. Then there's the other route, which I think a lot of people in our community are more focused on. We're focused on profit focused businesses and essentially bootstrapping them. So making as much money as early as possible without raising capital. But there's a third route, and that's essentially acquisition entrepreneurship, which is buying a business that's already making, $5,000-$10,000 a month in profit, and then growing and scaling that from $5,000 a month to $20,000 a month in profit. Usually that path is going to end in failure. 95% of startup businesses fail. So if you're only focusing on acquiring that 5%, one, already have that product market fit. They're going to have potentially 3 or 4 years of financial data that's showing the trends for the industry or the business. A few things when you're looking at a business, a lot of times people are having the misconception that, this business doesn't have recurring revenue set up, so it's not a good business. But my sort of philosophy and lens is I see that as an opportunity for growth. What I look for when I'm performing my own due diligence on businesses, what type of moat is around this business, and then what sort of opportunities are there to grow this business. When you're trying to get your business right, everyone's like, I need more traffic. I need more people to my website. I need more customers in the store. And I don't think that's always the best approach. Let's say you get 10 customers in your store and you're like, I need to double that to hit my goals. What if you just focus on converting those people in your store? If you focused on doubling their conversion rate?
Yeah, just fix that crappy conversion rate.
Yeah, so a lot of times that's the easier path because it can be expensive to 2 or 3 extra traffic, but it can be a lot cheaper to essentially improve your conversion rate optimization. A lot of times the businesses that require so much workload, they'll actually get rejected from a lot of marketplaces because they're just not a sellable asset. And so if you're thinking about building a business, there's a great book called Built to Sell. I highly recommend every entrepreneur out there, whether you want to sell your business or not, I highly recommend reading this book because if you're going to build a business, you want to build it in a way that's a sellable asset. And the reason behind that is by making it a sellable asset, it's going to be a much better business to run. And I've seen people who are like, man, I'm just fed up with my business. I'm ready to sell it. And I say, hey, 6 months before you do that, implement these changes. And then they're like, hey, I hired a $2,000 a month employee to replace myself and they've taken 95% of my workload. And now I just kind of do the big macro overview. They've made their business a lot more sellable, but they built it in a way where after they've made those changes, they're like, man, this is much more comfortable. I'm kind of just focused on the big picture stuff. And a lot of times that shift, it can be hard to make for an entry level, the first few years of your business because the margins just aren't there. But when you have the margins to essentially outsource and hire and replace yourself, you can make your business a lot more sellable, a lot better place to work on. And you can focus on those big changes that are going to take your business from, a small business to a bigger business or a more profitable business. So content businesses is kind of shocking to see 39x because I think that's fairly high. And during this period of time, there was a huge influx of people buying these online businesses just because money was pouring in for content businesses, for e-commerce businesses. The big shocking thing though is for the sales multiple, content business making $10,000 a month was essentially selling for 39x, which a $10,000 business would be selling for $390,000.
Yeah.
But now with Chat GPT, there's been a big downtrend for these content-based businesses because they think, a lot of times the market's going to get flooded with new people releasing content. So in some aspects, I think this multiple is going to come down a lot, and I've seen that in the coming years. So that's why it's so interesting to review these reports and kind of break it down year by year. As far as like the buyer timeline, this is kind of generally, what we see. If you're wanting to buy a business, finding a deal that matches up to your buying criteria. The purchase stage is going to be getting on the phone with the seller, asking them in-depth questions about the business, digging into any discrepancies that you see that come up during a due diligence, and then after that, depending on where you buy through, there's going to be a migration and inspection period. This is great because essentially it reduces your risk. So yeah, typically if you're looking to buy a business or sell a business, this is something that I'm working in every day with people from all walks of life, all types of businesses. So I do one-on-one programs for helping people buy. I just put the final touches on more of a DIY, do-it-yourself kind of program for buying a business. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, you can just get in touch with me. Mike Swigunski on Instagram, MikeSwigunski.com. Don't hesitate to reach out. I'm pretty active on all social media, but Instagram is probably going to be the fastest way to reach out to me. So don't hesitate to slide into my DMs, or you can send me an email or something at mike@globalcareerbook.com.
Awesome.
So any questions that you had, Riley, before we wrap up here?
Yeah, I get asked about this a good amount. Riley, I sold my business. What should I do now? Like, what's the next? They're like, Riley, what's the trends? What should I do?
Yeah, that's definitely a common thing. I talk with people who are selling their business is like, hey, I sold my kind of monthly recurring income. What do I do now? I think what happens to people is they get this big lump sum, and then it's like, okay, I got $500,000, but then each month it just starts chipping away and it's going down instead of up. And they're like, man, well, what should I do now? And depending on what your skill set is, it's usually best to like buy a business, optimize it to a certain point, and then flip it. Essentially what the skill sets you learn from your first business can kind of correlate into buying and flipping a business. So,
yep. Nice.